Civil war may sound extreme until you look around. Division is everywhere between the political climate, protests escalating. History has taught us that societies can fracture when there's high pressure building. But the real question is civil war an actual possibility, or would it look like something else? Let's talk about it. Hi everyone, Morgan here. My daughter requested homemade raisins, and I said absolutely. So that's what we're doing today. Plus I'm gonna make some lip balm. So we're gonna be talking about some Civil War. So yeah, let's see. Traditional civil war in the US, like head-to-head combat, is probably unlikely, but I think we're seeing it a little bit every single day, especially when we're talking about like the actual division of what's happening in the US with high immigration, cyber attacks, supply chain disruptions, the political climate right now, economic collapse, fueling the unrest. There's a lot going on right now that can fuel people just feeling and acting absolutely nuts, right? And so I think we're actually in the midst of a civil war right now, but it's not looking like a traditional civil war. Let's not focus on the label of, well, this is going to be a civil war, like we're all going to pull out our muskets and whatever and fight each other. Let's focus on the outcomes and how we should be prepared for what might happen if things escalate in your area and how to be prepared for it. Here are a few examples of what civil unrest might look like for you as a civilian. Power outages, either through cyber attacks or some sort of strained system. Power outages are likely just in general for a variety of reasons. Supply shortages, such as food and fuel, meds being locked down or rationed, these kinds of things. We've actually already been seeing some of this already. I don't know if you've ever seen the videos on TikTok or Instagram or whatever of people showing their local CVS or pharmacies or things like that, where like basically everything's getting locked down now. That is a sign of civil unrest, of society being unable to control itself. Local violence, of course, it would be things like protests in the cities, neighborhoods blocking off streets. Usually those things start out in really heavily populated areas, like a downtown area. But it could, depending on what's going on, escalate into further out areas. And I'm going to talk about what to do in these scenarios in just a minute. Okay, steady. No, don't. Yeah, you were afraid. And then because of those riots and protests and the local violence, there could be travel restrictions, as in maybe you just won't even be able to drive or bike or walk down your street safely or in a local community. You may not be on an actual battlefield, but your city could feel like a war zone, and especially if you can't even get fresh supplies or medications, or there's blackouts, or your actual safety is at risk. All right, now it is time to talk about what to do and how to be prepared for this stuff while you watch me make some homemade lip balm. Okay, so there are a lot of scenarios that could play out with a civil war. A lot of people might just be able to stay in their home. Some people may have to leave because they're literally forced from their home. You're going to need enough food and water to last at least 30 to 60 days. Like I have said many times in the past, I want you to start with 72 hours, but then immediately move to get 2 weeks worth. And after that, get a month, reach that month. But then everybody says, well, what after a month? Well, of course, you want to keep prepping for longer than a month if you possibly can. But rotate your food storage and then just keep getting as much food and water as you possibly can for your space, for your budget, for everything, right? In this case, we want to assume that grocery stores just may not be safe, and you want to not have to go to the grocery store should things not be safe for any given period of time. So let's talk about safety and security. So you want to make your home and yourself as hard a target as you possibly can, okay? We're talking about home hardening with extra locks, window alarms, and door alarms, and the security bars on doors and sliding glass doors. And you want to have extra lights and any type of barriers, things that are going to make things a hard target. We're not necessarily thinking, oh, nobody will ever get into my home, right? But we're thinking, oh, if somebody happens to try to get into my home, I will know, because then I will also have my home defense system ready to go, right? And you'll have a layered home defense system. Don't advertise your supplies, but have a gray man principle, and have basic self-defense tools, like I just said, basic self-defense, situational awareness. Always be in yellow, where you're just kind of like aware of sounds that are going on inside and outside of your house. See any cars that may look suspicious, people, right? And this is also a really good time to talk about community in your tribe. I always talk to people about your local connections in your local community. Well, this is really where your allies and your local community, like your neighbors, are really going to come in handy. Burning my hand. This is where your neighbors are going to come in handy. So strong local connections can matter more than gear, because one, your neighbors may have chickens, so maybe you could have some eggs, right? Maybe you can trade skills. Maybe you can trade assistance. Maybe you can help each other. But not just that, when people do come and knock it into your neighborhood, you can be allied with your neighbors to come together and come up with a plan, regardless whether you know that they're preppers or not. Just say hello. Nobody has to know anything about you or anyone else. Just be friendly. That's it. Keep a little bit of cash on hand, but when it comes to situations like this, I would really consider more barter items, barter and trade items, like physical assets. Anything can be a physical trade asset. It's like skills, hygiene, food, water, things like that. Make a list and then put together maybe like a trade box to where you just put specific items in there in case you ever want to trade. Of course, you can always use the supplies in those boxes, right? But, you have a box to where it's like, okay, if I need to trade this, that, or the other, I will be able to do that. Communication and information. I've talked about this over and over again. It doesn't matter if you're ever planning on transmitting out. You need to receive information about what is happening, especially if cell phone communication goes down. You want to get into a mesh network, ham radio, GMRS, CB, whatever. Just some type of radio in which you can start receiving information. I do highly recommend getting your ham radio license, but I get why people don't. But at the same time, receiving and getting information and knowing how to use a radio to receive information, but also in case things were to happen, to transmit out for, in case you need anything. You're going to want to bug in. Oh, it's almost ready. You are going to want a bug in and a bug out plan, because let's be real. Yeah, I want to stay in my home, but if things really escalate and, things have fallen apart with your neighbors and your allies or whatever the case may be, and you need to leave for your own safety, you need to have a bug out plan about where you're going to go, meeting places, if it's to friends or family, a land, park, just to another city that's maybe not being as affected as bad, or whatever the case may be. And that intel that I talked about before is also going to be crucial, because you're going to know which areas are going to be maybe more at risk than other areas. So you're going to have multiple evacuation routes. You're going to know different routes. You're going to have a physical map, and you're going to make this plan. These have pre-packed bags, pre-packed stuff. You're going to have your emergency disaster plan with your bug out plan and your supplies ready to go, right? This isn't a, well, where would I go when I have this stuff? No, this is a plan it now so that you know where to go. But of course, have your bug in plan as well and fortify your home to the best of your ability. Plans are great, gear is great, but we also need to be working on our mental preparedness. We need to make sure that no matter what comes our way, not just for tomorrow, but for today, with all the conflict and everything happening, it's stressful and it's creating stress and anger and frustration and just so much. And our just mental well-being is just going out the door. So I want us to be able to handle our anger and take it and use it and take action and do things that are productive instead of constantly worrying, instead of constantly being stressed or angry or having panic attacks. Survival is more than just gear. It's a mindset. Whoa. Oh my gosh, that peppermint just like went into my eyeballs. You may not believe me, but this is less mess than using one of those chapstick holder things. Those things are nightmares. I hate them. Listen, whether you believe an actual civil war is coming or not, we're in a bit of a crisis already where there's a lot of instability, a lot of uncertainty. So whether it's civil war, a world war, a personal war, whatever is going on, all of the tips that I mentioned today can go towards any emergency, natural disaster, or something much bigger. So download my checklist that I have down below in the description, hopefully in a pinned comment. Get ahead of the chaos. Nobody's coming to save you. You and your small community, that's it. Thank you all so much for watching Conquer Tomorrow by Preparing Today. I'll talk to you later. Bye.